The anime starts with an old couple, Shizu and his wife Inai. They were talking about their past, remembering how poor they were when they were young. Shizu felt sad because they couldn't afford a honeymoon back then. But Inai comforted him, saying that just being with him was enough for her. Even though life was hard, their love stayed strong. One day, they visited an apple tree they had planted on their wedding day. The tree had been damaged by a typhoon but still had one golden apple left. As the evening came, Shizu felt bad again, wishing he could have given Inai a better life. He got emotional and started crying. Then, something unbelievable happened. When Shizu looked in the mirror, his face had turned young. Shocked and thrilled, he went to find Inai and saw that she had become young too. Excited, Shizu held her hands and asked her to finally go on the honeymoon they missed. Later, their granddaughter, Mino, came to visit and was surprised to see her grandparents looking young and full of energy. Though confused, she recognized them immediately. Jokingly, she told Shizu to keep his hair long because it suited him and teased Inai, asking if she could borrow him. Inai laughed and said no. When Mino went home, she told her father, Yoshiaki, about their transformation, but he didn't believe her and thought she was joking. Meanwhile, in the village, some elderly neighbors were playing games and wondering why Shizu and Inai hadn't joined them lately. Suddenly, a handsome young man showed up, catching the grandmother's attention. To their surprise, it was Shizu. Inai arrived with tea and explained what had happened. One of the old men was so shocked that he spilled tea on himself. Few days ago, Yoshiaki visited his parents and asked them to move in with him for their safety. But Shizu refused, saying the land was part of their family history and he couldn't leave it. Inai calmed everyone down, saying that as long as she was with Shizu, nothing else mattered. The next day, Yoshiaki's wife, Kid, brought groceries to their house. She was startled to see a handsome man, Shizu. Embarrassed, she quickly left to calm down. When Yoshiaki arrived, he finally saw what Mino had meant about his parents looking young. Mino hugged her young grandfather happily, but Kid wasn't too pleased. She playfully scolded Shizu and sent him away with a slap. Before Yoshiaki left, Inai told him not to overwork himself and lovingly stroked his head, reminding him of his childhood. Yoshiaki smiled, and Mino joined in, enjoying her grandmother's warmth. The next morning, the village was excited about the sports festival. Since there were fewer children in the area, most of the participants were elderly. Many were nervous about competing because they didn't want to get hurt, especially since the Igarashi brothers always won. But when they saw the young and strong Shizu, they became hopeful. Despite Inai's protests, Shizu was chosen to represent their team. At the festival, an older man named Hawk showed up with his grandsons, Igarashi Sha and Igarashi Day. The brothers were confident they would win again and teased everyone else. But one of the villagers, Sono, revealed their secret weapon, Shizu. Hawk laughed, thinking Shizu was a young relative, but his laughter stopped when he realized Shizu was the original, now rejuvenated. The first event was tug-of-war. Sha and Day tried their best, but Shizu's strength was unbeatable. Even though they won, Hawk believed his grandson still had a chance. Meanwhile, the villagers wanted Inai to be their team's cheerleader. At first, Inai felt shy, but then she joined the cheering. Her happy and loud encouragement gave the older team so much energy that they easily won the first event. Next came the relay race. Sha, one of the grandsons, ran as fast as he could to win back the lead. His grandfather, Hawk, was sure they would win. But when Shizu and Inai started running, they were amazing. Because they had been together for 70 years, they worked perfectly as a team. They quickly caught up and passed the others, winning again. The last event was carrying a big ball together as a team. Shizu and Inai moved smoothly, while the younger team struggled. Sha began thinking about how much he needed to improve, while his brother Day just wanted to hide because he felt embarrassed. Hawk was angry. He not only saw his grandsons lose but was also reminded of the time, 70 years ago, when Shizu married Inai, even though Hawk had loved her too. Even though he was upset, Hawk congratulated Shizu and Inai for their win. Later, Inai talked to Hawk and said sorry for not going easy during the games. Hawk asked if she ever wished she had chosen him instead of Shizu. Inai gently said no. She was happy with how her life turned out. To make him feel better, she gave him some food and listened to him talk about the past. Hawk told her about losing his wife and raising his grandsons alone. Inai smiled and said his grandsons reminded her of how kind he was as a young man. This made Hawk feel a little better. Before leaving, Hawk promised to compete again next year. As the festival ended, Sha began to understand why his grandfather tried so hard to win. It wasn't just about pride. It was his way of remembering his past and honoring the love he lost. A flashback showed a young Hawk bravely proposing to Inai many years ago. A week later, Hawk gave Sha a task, deliver a package to Shizu and Inai's house. Nervously, Sha knocked on their door, and Mino, Shizu and Inai's granddaughter, answered. Sha was surprised to see that Mino was actually his classmate. Trembling, he handed her the package. Mino invited him in, and although Sha agreed, he instantly felt nervous. He played with his phone because he didn't know what to say. Mino was really popular at school, and this made him feel shy. But Mino was friendly, and soon they started chatting. Inai and Keed, Mino's mom, secretly watched them. Keed immediately thought her daughter had found a boyfriend. She started imagining Mino getting married, having kids, and all the responsibilities that come with it. Shizu came in, warmly thanked Sha, and showed him kindness. Sha was surprised by how welcoming Shizu was, especially compared to the women secretly spying on him. When Sha left, he realized he wanted to talk to Mino again. He even asked his grandfather to give him more tasks involving the Sato family, hoping to see her. Back at home, Mino asked her grandparents how they fell in love. Shizu told her about their struggles. Marrying for love was hard back then because parents arranged marriages. Shizu's father had even picked another bride for him. But Shizu refused and chose Inai instead. Inai, being brave, even scared off the other woman. Hearing this story, Mino begged her grandmother to act out that bold moment. Though embarrassed, Inai agreed to show her. She grabbed Mino's face and dramatically pretended to give a warning, just like she had done back then. Everyone laughed and clapped. Mino hugged her grandmother and said she was the coolest ever. The next day, two schoolboys walked through town, complaining about how boring it was. They joked about moving to a big city like Tokyo because the town was full of old people. But they stopped complaining when they saw a beautiful woman nearby. It was Inai. Her youthful look surprised them, and they blushed while nervously saying hello. After that, they kept finding excuses to walk through the area, hoping to see her again. Later, Inai remembered a day when she found an ad for a clothing sale in some old newspapers. She admired the pretty dresses in the ad. That memory came back when Shizu gave her a package. Inside was a gorgeous white dress. Inai was so happy and surprised by the thoughtful gift. Shizu acted like he didn't know who sent it, but his playful joke made her laugh. They enjoyed a lovely dinner together that evening. One evening, Inai and Shizu tried watching a teenage drama that Mino recommended. Shizu got annoyed because the characters kept saying, "I love you" over and over. He thought true love didn't need to be so dramatic. But Inai loved the show and even asked Shizu to act like one of the characters. Shizu played along, even though he thought it was silly. The moment reminded them of their younger days, and Shizu realized their love was still strong. Inai secretly enjoyed the show so much that she blushed while watching. The next day, Mino helped an elderly woman who spoke in a confusing, old-fashioned way. Mino didn't understand her and felt awkward. Luckily, Inai arrived and introduced the woman as Kacha, a fisherwoman and an old friend. Kacha teased Mino, saying she should marry one of her grandsons. Inai laughed and said Mino was too young for that. Later, another girl named Shai came to stay with Shizu and Inai. She had argued with her dad and said she wouldn't go back home. Shai was amazed at how young and lively her grandmother looked. Inai gave her food and encouraged her to talk about her feelings. Shai shared how her friends had left her because she was always busy studying. She felt pressured by her dad to become a doctor, but she didn't think she was smart enough. Inai reminded her of when she was little and wanted to become a doctor to help her sick grandmother. This made Shai feel a little better, and she hugged Inai, feeling loved. In a flashback, Inai remembered being too sick to go on a family trip. Shizu stayed home with her and joked that her beauty in a swimsuit would have made others jealous. Back in the present, Inai looked at a clothing catalog and thought swimsuits had become too revealing. She decided to wear the beautiful white dress instead, feeling confident. One day, Inai got a phone call from scammers pretending to be her son. She played along, recorded the call, and got their address. Then she handed the details to the police, who arrested them. Later, while testing her eyesight, Inai surprised everyone by reading tiny details in a newspaper that others couldn't see. To tease Shizu, she read aloud a sweet message saying he was the most amazing man. Both of them blushed. When Mino tried reading, Inai made her read, "There's someone I like." Mino stopped, embarrassed. Another time, Mino asked if her grandparents held hands when they were younger. Inai said they didn't because it wasn't common back then. But in truth, they often held hands to support each other. On a shopping trip, Inai didn't wear a glove on one hand, hoping Shizu would notice. When he didn't, she playfully held his hand herself. The next day, they visited their son Takahiro at his clinic. He was amazed by how healthy and young his parents looked. While waiting for test results, Takahiro thought about how he became a doctor to help others, inspired by his mom's illness when he was young. Inai felt proud of him for keeping his promise. In another memory, a big storm had nearly destroyed their apple orchard. Shizu and Inai worked hard to save the trees, and one of them grew a special golden apple. Unsure if it was safe to eat, they took a bite and felt thankful for the gift. One night, Inai dreamed about an hourglass crushing her, and Shizu said he had the same dream. They realized it was their 58th wedding anniversary. Shizu said he hadn't planned anything, but Inai found a cake in the fridge. They laughed and shared the cake, feeling grateful for their love and health after so many years.